Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Broadcast Podcast. My name is Dave from Perception Correction, channel you can find on Rumble and YouTube. Usually I hang out on the podcast to ask a few questions, pull up some visuals, but today, because of our special guest, I've been promoted to special guest host of the podcast. So let's start off by introducing the lovely ladies of the Broadcast Podcast. First up, her initial popularity on X was a result of the COVID era and her humorous way of calling out the bullshit happening worldwide and especially at home here with Trudeau and how he was turning Canada into China. Her popularity in 2024 continued to grow thanks to her dot connecting and exposure of the Picton Farm murders, child trafficking, and victims of MK Ultra style mind control. Her name is Tammy, aka Unacceptable Canadian Girl. Tammy, welcome.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Next up, she is self-described as a recovering liberal, but that word wouldn't be so bad if it still meant what it used to be. So I would say recovering leftist is more accurate. In a few short years, she's gone from voting for Trudeau to a realization that the world might be run by non-human entities feeding on low vibrational emotions. Her name is Ash, aka Fun Acceptable Views.
Hello,
Ash,
everyone.
welcome.
Thank you.
Lastly, this woman is so blunt and honest that she constantly reminds people that the truth isn't mean, that the truth isn't hate speech, that the truth is just the truth, whether you like it or not. As a result, numerous times she's been accused of being a Russian bot on Twitter, but like the rest of us on the podcast, she's just a regular person living in Canada that's sick of government overreach. Her name is Suze and goes by Suze, aka Suze Creamy on X. Welcome, Suze.
Hello, that's me, the fake Russian bot.
And then I'd like to give a quick shout out to the guys from the I'd like to give a quick shout out to the guys from the Big Puff podcast based out of Montreal. Go check out their stuff, which brings us, though, to our guest for this episode. Our guest is a researcher and author for 35 years now of around what I thought was 30 books. But before hopping on here, I read somewhere that was around 60. So we'll ask him later what the correct number is. Books ranging in size from 300 to 400 page offerings to 700, 800 page mega works. Since 2010 until present day, there's only been 2014, 2015, and 2021 that were years without a book released by this author. His latest book, The Reveal, is available as of September 1st, 2024, which is yesterday as of this recording. The Reveal closes out a trilogy, which started in 2022 with The Trap, which was followed in 2023 by The Dream, all released on September 1st, which I've obviously reread both in preparation for today's discussion. The introduction is not done yet. Our guest is also banned from 26 or 27 countries that make up a list of countries called the Schengen area. His crime, accepting an invitation to speak at a Dutch peace rally. If I'm not mistaken, Canada is one of those countries in the Schengen area, but we'll get into that. Other than his books, you can find our guest's work on his very own Netflix-like streaming service called Iconic for alternative media that has a vast vault of content to explore from knowledgeable contributors. If a Mount Rushmore for conspiracy, esoteric, occult authors, and researchers was built tomorrow, his face would be a given to be on it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Icke to the Broadcast Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, David.
Right.
Yay.
I'll quit while I'm ahead then.
David.
Thank you.
Well,
or even Russian bots like me. Great.
Since we are based out of Canada, I just need to get a couple things out of the way before we hop on to talking about your latest book. Are you banned from Canada, and what happened the last time you were in Canada scheduled to have talks?
Canada's not in the Schengen area. That's a European operation. But they do, along with the United States, I understand, take their criteria for whether they let people in or not from the Schengen criteria. Canada, well, I've had some experiences in Canada at the border. I've been stopped so many times. Everything from Toronto to what was that player? Calgary, and also even Victoria Island. I was stopped at the border. And, we became very friends, great friends. I mean, the border staff used to invite me to their Christmas party eventually, I remember I was on a speaking tour. It sounds grand, but it wasn't. And I spoke in Ottawa.
Yep.
And that was kind of trashed. and then went off to Tokyo. Long trip.
Yeah.
Went off to Toronto, and I was told what happened. I'll tell you what happened. It's a typical, really, and it's quite a funny story. I came into Ottawa late one night, last plane out of America, Chicago, I think it was. And I'm at the back of the plane. So when they're lining up, and it's late at night, I'm at the back of the queue, and I'm standing there, and I think, okay, we'll get in and get on. And then I saw two women, um, big women they were, and they were behind the back of the counter, and I saw one of them turn to the other one and go, pointing at me, right? Pointing at me, and I thought, well, I'd cancel your application for the undercover squad if I were you. So anyway, what happens then is this lady, walks up and stands next to me and just looks at me. I go, hello, all right. And then she turns around, never said a word, walks back, and then when I got to the guy, I was the last person, and he was ever so friendly. Oh, hello, mate. All right, yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. And then he saw my passport, and then his face kind of just completely changed, and he said, "Out the back." Right. So I followed these two big ladies and him out the back, and they told me that I couldn't speak in Canada. I didn't have permission to speak. I was supposed to speak the next day, and they said I couldn't. They asked me, when are you speaking? I said between about 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock. They said, well, we want you here at 1 o'clock, right in the middle, just to cancel the whole thing. In case I went ahead, and I did. I went there, did it in the morning, went to them in the afternoon, and then went back and finished it off in the evening. But what they said is, it was kind of funny. You've got to come back in the morning. So I came back in the morning, and they said it's $250 for us to make a decision, right, on whether they're going to let me in or not. And they, so I paid the $250, and I saw the woman writing the decision on a typewriter in front of me, and they said you can come in, but you can't speak. So then we went off to Toronto, and I was speaking at a university. In fact, the dean of the university, who pushed back on pressure to stop me speaking, he resigned to spend more time with his family shortly afterwards. You know the story. And anyway, they couldn't stop me speaking until I'd spoke, because they couldn't say you can't speak when I wasn't speaking. So I turn up and I walk out into the onto the stage, and I do my thing. And I didn't go back afterwards or anything. I just made sure I was stayed out there. And then when I went back after I'd finished, I opened the curtain, walked back, and there's two people standing there, a man and a woman from immigration, telling me that I can report to the airport immigration office in the morning, or I can spend the night in jail. I said, well, I'll probably come to the airport then. So that was just an example of many experiences I've had in Canada, where it's apparently impossible for you to say anything outside of the norm without the authorities push back on you. And then eventually I was speaking in Vancouver, because I can tell you loads of Vancouver stories. I won't, but I could, of cancelled events and what have you. And the last time I spoke in Vancouver, if it wasn't for the mayor, who stood up to all the pressure and said, no, he's speaking, freedom of speech, that would have been cancelled as well. So me and Canada have a love-hate relationship. I love Canada and the government hates me.
That's okay.
Same with
The government
us.
hates us too.
All right. That's good. I wanted to clear that up because a lot of people, I still think too many people in Canada especially think you're just the shape-shifting lizards rule the world guy. So before we get further into the reveal, I'd just like to run down a few things that you talked about in the dream and in the trap in no particular order, and then I'll get to my question about the reveal. So, in The Trap and the Dream, you covered various concepts, including Rockefeller education, the blind leading the blind, the woke mind virus, your thoughts on transsexuals and the popular gender bathroom wars of 2022, and the unfortunate incidents that occurred as of that worldwide, men and women's sports being people being scared to define the word woman, trigger warnings creating a soft generation, cult-owned Silicon Valley covering for cult-owned World Health Organization during the fake pandemic, Rockefeller Pharma, fact checkers, online hate speech bills. Would you give a great example of people wishing death upon Putin being okay, but other political figures within the country, them doing something even of lesser degree, them being jailed for it, clots seen by embalmers and graphene oxide, the brain being a decoding system and not what houses consciousness, the trap being the reincarnation process, and the list goes on and on. So my question would be, as a reader, what can I expect to get out of the reveal that I didn't get out of the trap and the dream?
Oh, well, it goes much deeper in the rabbit hole. That's why it's a trilogy. What I'm showing in the reveal is tangible evidence for these far out concepts and taking it even further and even deeper. Because my philosophy over the last 35 years I've been doing this is that I'm always aware that whatever I know, there's always more to know. And so you keep pushing and asking yourself, okay, I think I know this, but what don't I know? And what that does is keep you moving deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. And one of the things that I've been quite vehement about in the last year or so is how so much of certainly the mainstream of the alternative media that gets all the algorithmic support and funding and so on and promotion has got to a certain point and stopped. And now it's going round and round like an eddy in the river while the river passes it by. And, I saw a quote recently, a very good quote, which was talking about how the awakening, and I absolutely agree, is a multi-leveled experience in the sense that you awaken to see that like so many did during COVID, that the forces that appear to be running the world, like prime ministers and presidents, are not actually running the world at all. It's in the shadows that the real decision making is coming from. So that's one level of the awakening. That's the start. And then you keep going through different levels of. I say it's awakening. Yes, it is in that sense, but it's actually deprogramming. You're deprogramming yourself from the perceptions of reality that have been fed to us through mainstream science, mainstream religion, cultural influence, whatever, all the way through our lives. Just a simple example. If you're born in India and large parts of Asia, you're almost certainly going to be a Hindu. If you're born in the Middle East, you're almost certainly going to be a Muslim. If you're born in the southern states of America, you'd very likely be a Christian. This, therefore, is an indication that these things aren't coming from individual filtering of information to come to a conclusion. They're massively influenced by it's all you've ever heard or the emphasis of your childhood, etc. And so there's a massive deprogramming operation going on because my philosophy is that we are already awake. We are already consciousness, expanded consciousness. The true I is an eternal expression of consciousness, having an eternal journey of experiencing forever. What this human experience can be described as is isolating perception overwhelmingly in the five senses, and even if it's beyond that, it's still within what I call the matrix, the simulation, and so you are processing information through the perceptions that you have been programmed to believe in. And so, if there's a Christian saying something and you're a Muslim, well, by definition, they're going to be wrong. Never mind look at what they're saying and let's have a look at each individual statement and see if it makes any sense. No, you're wrong because what you believe is a different name to me. And awakening is going beyond that programming. And what's happened with the alternative media is that, and I mean the central core of it, because outside of that central core, what I call the barricade brigade, here and no further, are some fantastic people doing fantastic work, but they don't get the big algorithmic support and the promotion. And so what we have since COVID is the regression, as I see it anyway, from this expansion that was going on. Because COVID for me was this is a fantastic opportunity here, because so many people are starting to see the world's not like they thought it was, and okay, let's keep this going, and let's let people see that it's absolutely nothing beyond nothing like they thought it was. But what's happened is certainly in America, which kind of dominates is so much of the alternative media in the central core, it's regressed into right wing politics. And we were coming to understand the alternative media, which didn't exist when I started. There was no alternative media, just a few disparate individuals putting information out. But it was starting to grasp more and more that we live in one party states, and that although one party, which gets less pushback for the what I call the cult agenda from its natural constituency, that moves quicker. Trudeau, Keir Starmer in UK now, and the other party, its natural constituency is much less agreeable to this agenda, so it has to move a bit slower and has to use different rhetoric. But if you watch the outcomes, they're going in exactly the same direction. And so we're beginning to see this, as they used to say in America when I was there in the 90s, putting this out to nobody at the time. It doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. But what's happened now is that it's coagulated into right wing politics, the left right puppet show, and for me that's that's a barricade that's focusing attention on one myopic area of what's happening at the expense of people seeing that it's vastly greater than that.
Got it. No, understood. And for me personally, something from your books that kind of opened me up, and I always remind myself, was an equation or a formula, I guess, where control of information equals control of perception equals control of behavior equals control of society. And then whenever something occurs in the news or in the world events, just remind myself of that equation right there. And you start connecting to who belongs in what part of that equation, and you can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah, that takes us back one step into censorship. We perceive as we do, so we behave as we do, and collectively, that's human society. But where do we get the perceptions from? We get them from information received. Can be anything. It can be a mate down the pub, what's left of the pubs. And it can be a Facebook post. It can be the 9 o'clock news, whatever. And you are forming personal experience. You're forming your perceptions from that information. And what censorship is about is ensuring that you control the information that people receive. Thus, you have a wonderful opportunity or chance to dictate perception. And that's what the censorship's all about. That's what the censorship during COVID was. The Nuremberg Code talked about informed consent. Well, all these censors were, including Silicon Valley, governments, all of them, regulatory agencies, cult-owned regulatory agencies. They were denying informed consent, because if that was happening, then vast numbers of people who had the fake vaccine, not even a vaccine by previous definitions, would not have had it. And a lot of them have had consequences in death and health destruction they would not have had.
Right.
So again, that's a great example of how if you control information through censorship, you dictate perception and dictate behavior. Oh, okay, doctor, I'll have the jab.
Hi, I'm Suze.
I'm Ash.
And I'm Tammy. And together, we're the broadcast.
If you like podcasts and chicks without dicks that chat about government corruption
The dark sides of Hollywood.
Fighting against the woke mob and commies.
and every conspiracy theory we can cook up, you won't be disappointed.
New episodes drop every Sunday night at 7 p.m.
Available on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Right. Yeah. Well said. And then for the viewers that are new, I guess here we're because again Canada is just catching up with a lot of the rest of the people in the world. When you say global cult, what do you mean by global cult? For those that don't know.
Yeah, well, this really does put into perspective how things happen, because over the years, going back, 30 odd years, people have said to me, a few people can't control the world. It's not possible. And I realized in the very early years of the 1990s that they did. And my question was, how? So I set out to find out. And that's when the global cult emerged. I mean, it's kind of funny now. I'm seeing people bombshell broadcast breaking news. And it was in my books in the 90s, some of it. And it's kind of sad. I'm seeing like posts on X and clips of videos where people in the alternative media are saying, I don't know who they are. I say they, but I don't really know who they are. But that's been identified. I was identifying who they are kind of way back and how it's done. It's very simple. It's a structure, the global cult, that can be very much likened to a spider's web. Imagine a spider's web all over the planet. And in the middle of the spider's web is the spider. Now, ultimately, I think you've already mentioned that in your introduction, that spider is not human. It's not even in this dimension of reality, which is so tiny, the human dimension of reality. It's one of the things I go into in the reveal. My God, it's so this level of what they call atomic matter. I mean, it's laughably small, and we think this is the human world. I mean, 99%. Some scientists say 99.9% of the visible universe is not atomic matter. It's something called plasma, which is we can't see, and it's the human world of matter is so tiny, it's ridiculous, and this global cult is imposing the will upon the human population of this non-human force. This is what the spider is. That spider is that interface between the non-human force in the hidden, which is almost everything to human sight, and this global cult. So around the spider in this cult, we're talking now in the world of human, are secret societies. Every strand in this web is a secret society, a semi-secret group, or organizations that we see in the public arena, like governments, World Health Organization, Big Pharma, and so on. And so the spider is dictating the agenda and the direction of human society towards more and more, obviously, dystopia. And it getting faster and faster. The more control you get, the faster you can move forward to get to your dystopia even quicker. That's what we're seeing now. I've described it really as the totalitarian tiptoe becoming now the totalitarian sprint. My goodness me, people in Britain are just waking up to that since this Starmer government came in a few weeks ago. So the strands immediately around the spider are the most exclusive secret societies. People in those secret societies, and you won't see them in the public arena, know pretty much what the game is. And then you come out from the spider in this web, and you're still in the hidden, but you're meeting then the secret societies. We don't know, what they do in detail in terms of their meetings and stuff, but we know they exist. We're talking the Freemasons, and I'm talking the inner core of the Freemasons, not Joe and Bob down the lodge. Um, I'm talking the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, Opus Dei, and such. The inner core of the Jesuit order, and many others. And you then coming out, and this agenda is coming out through the secret societies, and then you meet what I call the cusp point in the web, and that's where the hidden part of the web meets the seen part of the web. And at that point, you have what I call the cusp. And there you have organizations like the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations at its inner core, the Club of Rome, which was created in 1968 to specifically use environmental concerns. Many invented, not all of them, but human caused climate change, absolutely, to justify centralization of power and deletion of freedom. And also in this cusp part of the web, you have these non-governmental organizations, many of them funded by George Soros, and you have the so-called think tanks. And again, it's important to emphasize that these secret societies I'm describing, not the inner core ones, but I mean the ones that you can see, and these organizations that are at the cusp, they're fiercely compartmentalized. So only a few, even within them, know the real reason that it's happening. I mean, I've met people over the years who are apparently way up in the hierarchy who had no clue why they were doing things. They were just following orders to do them, so they did them. And I remember a guy who used to be kind of a big wig in Shell Oil in South America. He listened to a talk I did back in the 90s in London. And he came up to me afterwards. He retired by then. And he said, I've just realized why I was asked to do things I didn't understand at the time. So you can go very high before you are meeting anyone who really, really knows. So then you come out from the cusp organizations, and those cusp organizations have a collective role. See this with the World Economic Forum. It's taking the agenda coming out through the hidden, and it's playing it out in the world of the seen. That's their job. And so they play it out through governments and government agencies, World Health Organization, like I say, Silicon Valley, Big Pharma, etc. And in this seen part of the web, in terms of the organizations we see and kind of interact with all the time, governments, etc., you have, again, fierce compartmentalization. But all these organizations, whether it's a government, World Health Organization, whatever, they have a point that if you go deep enough, they connect to this web. And at that point where they connect, all these organizations that look to the public to be completely random and different and not connected are absolutely connected. So if you look at Bill Gates is basically running the World Health Organization, and he's running it on behalf of the Rockefellers that created the World Health Organization in 1948 as part of the UN. And suddenly you start to see when you grasp this web connection. And again, most of the people in the World Health Organization won't have any idea this is how it is. But if you then look at the world and you look at COVID or whatever, you start to see answers to things that were kind of bewildering before. Like I think you mentioned when you were talking about what was in the books. When the World Health Organization delivered the narrative for COVID nonsense, the Silicon Valley Corporation said they were going to censor anyone that was challenging that narrative. or exposing that narrative. Now, from the point of view of they're not connected, why would they do that? I mean, what are you doing? You're supposed to be the town square where we share opinions. No, censorship right from the start. And that's because if you go deep enough into Facebook, deep enough into Google and YouTube, etc., you're meeting the point where they connect to the web, and the World Health Organization, same. So basically, what's happening there is the Silicon Valley corporations owned by the cult are censoring on behalf of the World Health Organization narrative owned by the cult. You have big pharma going to the regulatory agencies like the CDC in America and the FDA, and they're asking for permission to use this jab on younger and younger people, indeed to use it at all, when they've done no trials worth the name. There's no support for the idea that it's safe and effective. And these regulatory agencies are there, if you just look at the narrative, to protect us from big pharma and what have you. But they are controlled by the cult. Big pharma is controlled by the cult. Indeed, it was created by the cult, not least through the Rockefeller family again. And therefore, the cult-owned big pharma, Pfizer, Moderna, is going to the cult-owned regulatory agencies and asking for permission to use a jab, which is part of a cult agenda for the world. This is what's happening. This is what people say. Oh, why do they do that? That's ridiculous. Well, when you realize how the cult works and how the web works, those answers become obvious.
I read the books, watch the lectures, and listen to the podcasts. So you don't have to.
Hit the intro.
Well, I mean, you really should read the books, watch the lectures, and listen to the podcasts. A lot of work goes into them. But if you don't want to or can't, I got you covered when it comes to secret societies, false flags, the occult, the esoteric, globalist elite, satanic families that rule the world, and more. Presented in an entertaining and informative way like never before. Subscribe and follow Perception Correction.
Yep. No, it makes sense. And then I wanted to share something back to, you mentioned non-human entities if you get far enough into the web. This came out July 25th, and it's something that you had to see. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a gentleman that created a device that takes pictures and sees multidimensional beings.
Right.
And
let me get my glasses on.
He of course, after creating this device, disappeared.
Right.
And then here's some of the pictures that he took of just pointing it at something, and then his device would take pictures like this.
Well, obviously, I've not read that story. If you could send that to me, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. But on the face of it, it fits with what I'm saying about this non-human force. You know, while I've been researching this since 1990 full time, I've had to research so many different subjects. It's unbelievable that the range of subjects you have to research to put the dots together to see how it works. And crucial has been the nature of reality itself. It's always surprised me since I was a kid that people seemed disinterested in who are we, where are we, what we're doing here. Right. But I got really kind of obviously into that big time in 1990 onwards. And in understanding reality, and when I say that, one of the things that kind of find surprising is that orthodox mainstream science in its different disciplines has actually discovered things about reality that if they only put them together, all the different disciplines kind of weren't fighting each other for funding and prestige, but they just put them together. And if they just withdrew their minds from the orthodoxy they've been programmed to believe in, they'd realize that actually a lot of this they've already sussed. So it was it's something that I say should be taught to every child from the moment they are old enough to grasp it. And that is this, that when we look through our eyes, we are not seeing everything in the space we're looking at. What we're seeing is a narrow band of frequency called visible light. And again, according to mainstream science, and it will be far more extreme than this in truth, the in terms of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically the reality we're experiencing, that is about 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms. Some say it's as high as 0.5%, doesn't matter, it's tiny. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can actually see, everything people are looking at now is within that band frequency, is a fraction of the 0.005%. So when people say to me, you say we're being manipulated by entities we can't see, why can't we see them? Why, it would be obvious we would see them. Well, the answer is you can hardly see anything. We can hardly see anything. That's the point. And people say that they saw a UFO craft, or they saw an entity just appear out of nowhere and then disappear into nowhere. And of course, the five sense perceptual level says that's ridiculous, that's impossible. But it's not. It's very simple. What happens is something, an entity, a craft, whatever, enters visible light. And at that point, we see it. And it appears to the observer it's come out of nowhere. And then it leaves visible light. And to the observer, it's disappeared into nowhere. It's not disappeared at all. It's just left that frequency band that you can see. And in this hidden, it's called in esoteric circles the astral dimension. It's a dimension that in its lower levels interpenetrates ours, and at the lowest level can interact with ours. That is operating just outside of human sight to way outside of human sight, depending on the scale of frequency. And that in the lower levels is where these entities are that are manipulating human society via this global cult. Because it was kind of interesting, when I started uncovering this in the early 1990s and into the mid 1990s about this cult, this web, and the people involved, some of the most famous people in the world. And even, if you can see them, they're gophers. The real power is not seen. Even Gates, for instance. But I realized that these people were doing sacrificial rituals. They were doing satanic sacrificial rituals. And it's like, what? And then you go back and you start to see where this all came from, because obviously this is not something that's happened in 5 minutes or 50 years. You go way back to Babylon and ancient Egypt, and you can pick this story up. But what you find all over the world in the ancient period is people that were openly doing sacrifices to the gods. And then you realize, as the dots go together, that the quote gods that these rich and famous cultists today are doing rituals to, including human sacrifice rituals, are the same quote gods that the ancients were doing it to, only this time openly. And they were doing rituals to give gifts to the gods. And then you start to ask the question, okay, so what do the gods get out of this then? It's a gift to the gods. How do the gods benefit from someone being bloody sacrificed? And then big pennies start to drop. Like there was a guy called Robert Monroe. I think he died in the 1950s. And he popularized what's called out-of-body experiences. they're different to near-death experiences, because near-death experiences, the body has to die to release the consciousness into this astral dimension. So people have a completely different sense of reality. Out-of-body experiences are people that can project their consciousness into this astral dimension while still being, in bodily terms, alive. And he became so skilled at it and wrote so extensively about it that the CIA became involved. And they brought in people who had similar gifts into something called the Gateway Project, or the Gateway Process. And they did experiments and studies where they were documenting what these people experienced in this astral dimension, in this projection state, consciousness state. And they came across, this has come from, military people that were involved, and kind of one of the military people that ran it. They came across so many reptilian entities in this astral dimension that the Gateway Project gave them the name the Alligators.
Jeez.
And what Monroe said is that he found out, or learned in his astral projections, that these entities are feeding off human low vibrational energy around the base state of fear. Because, again, mainstream science, every time you feel emotion or think, you're generating a frequency that relates to the nature of the thought and the nature of the emotion. And so you then start to see that these entities, because of their very nature, because of what they're doing, their perceptual state, which is kind of inverted and what we would call evil, they operate in a very low vibrational level of this astral dimension. And so to absorb this energy as a sustenance, it's like in the Matrix movies when the Morpheus character held up a battery and said, the machines have turned humans into one of these. Or what did he say? The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these, a battery. It was a profound truth that was being spoken there. And so these entities have to elicit from humans this low vibrational energy. Thus, they have no interest and no benefit in people living lives of joy and love and happiness and peace. They want them in low states of emotion around fear, anxiety, depression, conflict, all these things. I mean, a war is like an energetic banquet. The World War, I mean, my goodness. And then you talk to former Satanists and people that have taken part in these rituals, many against their will, some who've seen the light. And you realize that that's what the gift to the gods is. They are running these rituals to create and generate maximum terror in the sacrificial victim. And these, quote, gods are absorbing that energy coming off the terror, which is very, very powerful low vibrational energy from the victim. Because, if you see someone in an emotional state, you can see by their body language and what they say and what they do that they're in an emotional state, but you can't see the frequencies coming off them that reflect that emotional state. Why? Because they are astral in nature. They're going in to this astral low level of this astral dimension when these quote gods, who are not gods at all, are absorbing this. And so we have a situation where the human world has been set up. I say it's the equivalent of a massively advanced computer simulation or virtual reality simulation. Right. And it can be explained how we interact with it. And the idea is to constantly manipulate events and perceptions so that we go on producing this low vibrational energy on which they are sustained energetically. And the name given to it by Robert Monroe was loosh. this low vibrational energy. And the human world is a loosh farm. And the more conflict, the more low vibrational energy we create, the more we're empowering that which is manipulating us.
Wow, that is something. We've lost Dave, so we'll give him a second to hopefully join us again. Oh, there he is. Dave, you're back.
Got it. The camera just keeps going in and out, but I keep staying connected. And that was something. Sorry to interrupt, but I am going to get one more question in before I open it up to you ladies, and then hopefully some viewer questions that we did collect. But this last question for me has special significance. So last year in September of 2023, I traveled to London and then made my way to Chatham for September 15th, all by myself. Arriving in Chatham, I booked a hotel, an 8-minute walk from the train station. Waited 3 hours before I got my notice. It was a 13-minute Uber ride to go to this community center type building to see Mr. David Icke speak. I put my question inside the question box for afterwards, and it did not get chosen. But I'm here to ask the question today, almost exactly 1 year later.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's kind of random. We take them out, so unlucky, but.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything against the processes. I just find it quite the, synchronicity or whatever you want to call it, as far as here I am a year later to ask the question. And the question was, if you could administer a truth serum that works to any member, past or present, of the global cult, and then have a televised 3-hour interview or debate with said person that is broadcast worldwide with 1 billion viewers, who would be that person that you would administer the serum to, and why?
Ooh.
Well, it would be quite possibly a member of the British royal family that is very much part of this bloodline hierarchy, and the bloodlines come into this as well, because these entities, they also enter this reality, and they do it through certain bloodlines, hybrid bloodlines. And, one of the things that I've been laughed at endlessly about is when I talk about shape-shifting. Because and I'm going to come around to answer the question, but when I first came across the reptilian thing, it was in America. I was traveling America, talking to nobody, by the way, in those days, in 1996. And I met in a period of 15 days, 12 separate people in different parts of America. I was traveling every day, who told me they'd seen someone apparently human change into a reptilian form and then go back again. And one of the things that you don't do if you're interested in the truth is you don't just dismiss it unless you know from previous research it's ridiculous. Then okay, but if you don't, then what I do is I put it on the back burner and let it simmer, and I see what else in terms of information comes along. And enormous amounts did, compounding and compounding and compounding, to the point where you think, well, it's crossed my line now. This is happening. This is real. So the shape-shifting appears, again, if you can lock people into 5 sense reality, and that's the game, that's the program, then you can only see or perceive the physical world, then shape-shifting is impossible. People say to me, it's impossible to go from one solid body to another solid body. And I say, well, yeah, you know something, you're absolutely bloody right, it is. But the body's not solid. And that's another part of this whole reality. It's holographic. It's all energetic. And, we could go into explaining that in detail. But so the hybrid bloodlines are 2 energetic information fields. Think of 2 Wi-Fi fields with the radiation fields, electromagnetic fields that carry information. And when the human field is the dominant one, which it is most of the time with these people, in fact, almost the entirety of the time when they're not among safe people, if you like, in the rituals, and people that are observing that person will be reading, decoding, and I explain in the books how this works. It's ever so simple. They're decoding that human field. And then sometimes they'll shift. It's very rare in a public situation comparatively, but they'll shift to the other field, which is a non-human information field, often reptilian, but not always. And then the observer starts decoding that field. Now, to the observer, what's happened is someone's gone from a solid human body to a solid reptilian body and back again. But that's not what's happened. It's all gone on in here. It's like a computer decoding Wi-Fi. That's what the body is. It's like I've been calling it since the 1990s, a biological computer. And we can only see this tiny band of visible light because the body is programmed, biological computer, only to see that tiny band of frequency. That's why we see it. The body is decoding it. Because if that band of frequency was wider, we'd go, "Who are you? You don't look human." You'd see them because you'd see a greater swathe of that frequency into where they are. But so they keep us here. That's not an accident. Going to the books, and so you are looking at these entities that come into this reality via particular bloodlines that are this hybrid type. And that's the reason why we have this, since ancient history, incessant interbreeding between certain particular bloodlines called royal or blue bloods or whatever. And they were running the show around the world under names of or labels of royalty and aristocracy. And then when the population decided they weren't going to be ruled by a royal anymore, ironically, in Britain, we still have royalty. But the system moved into another mode to respond to that rejection of royalty ruled by bloodline and genetic line, and they moved into politics and all this corporate situation that we've had since. But the bloodlines have gone on into breeding. Instead of wearing coronets and crowns, they wear dark suits and work in the City of London or Wall Street or many other places. And so when you look at these entities who are incarnate from this manipulative realm of the entities, that's when you will really find the people that or who know deeply what the hell's going on and what they're doing and why. And one of those would have been a guy called Jacob Rothschild, who died recently. And so he is definitely one that I would choose for what you suggest in the question, because he would have known an enormous amount about what the game is, how it's played, and why it's played. And so he's definitely one. The people like David Rockefeller, he's more of a lower down the hierarchy than Jacob Rothschild and the top Rothschilds would have been. But he would be another one that would know an enormous amount as well.
Perfect. There, 1 year later, I got my answer. Floor's open, ladies. Ash,
I have a question.
There you go.
So David, you've said many times, the power of the few is in the acquiescence of the many. So basically, if the many would just say no, the few would have no power. So obviously the solution to get that done is, I'm sure you would agree, is peaceful, non-compliance. My question is, how do we convince people to actually not comply? Because like I've seen personally over the last few years, like everybody's decisions are driven by fear. And a lot of people, yes, have woken up, but they still are too afraid to not comply. For example, like I saw even with the COVID jabs, I got fired for not getting jabbed. And I had people around me that even though they knew complying was not going to be better for them in the long run, but they still complied because they were afraid of losing their jobs. or in other aspects, they're afraid of ridicule, etc. So how do we convince these people that are waking up to actually not comply?
Well, we can't, in the sense that if they
Okay.
stay in their current perceptions, their behavior will go on being what it is now. And the current perception for me means current state of consciousness. You mentioned there that even people who have woken up won't go into non-compliance, but that means they've not woken up. And this goes back to what I said earlier about the awakening process. Because I never say I'm awake. I never say that someone's awake, because we can't be awake in its true sense while we're in the situation of perceptual oppression that we're in. What you can do is go through a process of awakening, which is a process that doesn't end, basically, certainly if you're in this simulated reality.
Right.
So this is why I'm just going to have a sip of a drink. One sec. See that?
I will join you with that sip.
Roach's granddad. There you go.
Aw.
Oh,
Oh, God. Yeah, this is why the spiritual and the five sense conspiratorial have to fuse. And this is one of the things that I've been very concerned about, like I said earlier, with the alternative media mainstream, is that it's got caught in the double whammy of right-wing politics and unquestioning religious belief. You see, for me, the biggest awakening is self-identity. A massive part of this conspiracy is to manipulate the population to self-identify with being human, to self-identify with being the labels of a human life, what I call the I am R's. I am a man, I am a woman, I am this race, this religion, that religion, this sexuality, that sexuality. And if you notice, society, as we've moved along in recent times, is getting more fiercely focused upon the body labels. And so if you self-identify with being human, you are self-identifying with limitation, with I can't, with it's not possible, with I have no power.
Wow.
And so that's what they want to do, because as soon as you identify with being human, you're identifying being a five sense entity, and that's it, basically.
Yeah.
But if you realize that what we call human is not the I, it is an experience, a brief, oh my goodness me, brief experience. I mean, I'm 72 now, and my life's just gone. When it's like it almost never happened. It's been so fast, and if you self-identify with the body, that's what you're self-identifying with. But if you see that it's an experience, and that you, the true I, are the consciousness having that experience, that's a completely different dynamic. Because the way I'm saying in the reveal and the books that it works is that your perceptual state is everything. Everything. That's why the whole foundation of human control, the stadium in which it's all played out, is control of perception. So if you perceive you are human and nothing more, or you're human judged by some judgmental God who loves you really, then you are self-identifying with myopia. And that self-identification is a focus of attention. So you have this infinite field of consciousness which you can tap into, but you are only tapping into a tiny fraction of it, because your perception is that you are in effect just little me, I have no power. One creates the other. When you redefine your self identity, which I say is the real awakening, then you are self identifying with being consciousness. Ultimately, if you expand into this field deeper and deeper and deeper, ultimately all consciousness. And
Yeah.
and as you self identify, your self identification expands and expands and expands from little me to infinite me. You're also expanding deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this field of consciousness, insight, awareness, knowing, all these things. And suddenly you can see things. So, first of all, your frequency completely changes, what you're giving off, but you can start to see things you couldn't see before. The number of people who said to me over the years when they've kind of gone through this process, why didn't I see it before, mate? It's so bloody obvious. But it wasn't when you're there. It is when you're there. Because what happens there, this is the dot connecting. See, when you're there, everything seems random and apart from everything else, because you're basically only perceiving yourself as a dot. So all these other dots, well, what are they? They're just organizations, people, I don't know. But when you do that and you expand your awareness deeper and deeper into this field of consciousness, you see how the dots connect. It becomes obvious to you. It becomes very plain. And
Yeah.
so your fear of doing what you know to be right disappears, because that is going, save me, doctor. I've got to stay alive. Save me. And anything that challenges or makes you fear not surviving in a human body is like, oh my God, I can't do that. What are the consequences of doing that? What if I do that? Right. But
Yeah.
when you expand and self-identify, not as a concept, but as a being, as an is, that you are this expanded consciousness, like we all are. The massive part of the foundation part of this conspiracy is to make us forget that. Then you realize this is just a brief, almost infinitesimal experience called human, and when it's over, I'll just go on my eternal journey of experiencing forever. So you'll do what if I cease to cooperate with you? Well, we'll do this and we'll do that. We might even kill you. Okay, well, go ahead then. Go ahead.
Right.
Because I'm infinite awareness. You can't kill me. Oh, you might be able to kill this, but you won't. You won't kill me because I'm unkillable. I'm consciousness, or you might get a fine. You might get this. Might get that. Well, this is what I would say to those people. First of all, realize who you really are. I mean, so many of my books are remember who you are, and this human race, get off your knees, and things like that. It's this realization of the true I is fundamental to everything. And the mainstream of the alternative media never talks about this stuff. Almost never, and probably never, from my experience. And yet, it's the answer. It's how we get out of here. It ain't stockpiling weapons and voting for Trump. It's this realization of the true I. That's the real awakening. And what I would say to those people is, even at the level you're looking at it, if you think it's bad now, if you go on cooperating with your own enslavement, then you have not seen anything yet. Because where this is leading, and not too far from now in this plan, is connecting artificial intelligence to the human brain. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. Instead of manipulating information to control your perceptions will become direct. And we're talking your kids and grandkids alive today. As well as you, if you survive that long. So it's not sometime never over the rainbow, this stuff, and therefore you've got to look the dragon in the eye and wait for it to blink, not you. Otherwise, you're going to reach a point. I mean, how can you rebel when your AI mind is telling you not to, or your AI mind is telling
Right.
you there is nothing to rebel against. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're going, and what I'm seeing, just as an aside on this, or not even an aside, it's absolutely part of it, is this Trump campaign, and I'm completely non-political with these people. I mean, they're all masks on the same face anyway, ultimately. But
Yeah.
I mean, Harris is moronic, and so I've got no brief for any politician. But what's happening is this Silicon Valley AI mafia of Musk and many others in that arena, like Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, his protege, who he funds, is J.D. Vance, the vice president running mate currently. And all you look at the background of Peter Thiel, you'll see the connections he has. Peter Thiel, oh my goodness, Peter Thiel created, co-founded Palantir, which is a Pentagon CIA operation providing technology, surveillance technology for not just them, but for other intelligence agencies and militaries around the world. And Peter Thiel, who is in this Trump supporting group, just interviewed by Joe Rogan, he must be important, and he he's on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group, this fundamental part of the cusp operation that takes information from the hidden and plays it out in the seen. That's what he's doing, and they're all
Right.
around Trump. The a co-founder of of Palantir is also on the steering committee of the Bilderberg
Oh wow.
Group. So these what's happening now around Trump, this AI gang that want to push on to this AI control of the human mind, they're all around Trump for a reason. They're funding Trump for a reason. And Elon Musk, who's become this kind of free speech hero, well, there's a reason for that because I've been tracking Elon Musk for years and years and years. And there was a time when the alternative media was pointing out, parts of it anyway, that that the companies that he ran were all ticking the boxes of the cult agenda and the agenda of the World Economic Forum. And since he's bought Twitter, X, all that has stopped. It's not stopped within that area outside of the alternative media, outside of the Barricade Brigade, but in the Barricade Brigade, he's a bloody god. He is not. And what he's doing, and now he's obviously become a massive supporter of Trump using the Twitter as a vehicle. He's the soft sell to AI control of the human mind, as people like Gates and Schwab are the hard sell. So they're pushing it hard sell. We must, and people like Ray Kurzweil at Google, who says this is going to be happening by 2030. They're the hard sell. But there's a large group of people that are awake to a point who don't want this AI thing. They can see where it's going. They don't want it. So you've got the wokers and all that side of things. They'll just do whatever they're bloody told. Basically, you can see that. Tell them something, they believe it. Human caused climate change. No such thing as a woman and all that stuff. But there's this big group of people. 74 million voted for Trump at the last election. But in America alone, never mind their like around the world, they don't want it. So you've got to give them the soft sell. So what I say to people is, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. Know what the outcome is planned to be, and then you'll see the stepping stones towards it. Now, the hard sell is we just impose it. But you're not going to do that. You're not going to get away with that unchallenged with this group that doesn't want it, which a lot of them support Trump. You need to give them the soft sell. So what is what is Musk saying? What he's doing in things like Neuralink, although that's the Stone Age compared with what's possible. He's saying that AI is inevitable, and that it's not. It's choices, but he
Right.
says it's inevitable, and therefore we have to connect or be connected to AI so that we can compete. Openly saying that. So, what's the outcome of the hard sell? The human brain is connected to AI, and AI becomes the human mind. What is the outcome of the soft sell of Musk? That AI becomes connected to the human brain and becomes the human mind. You see what I'm saying about you have different approaches for different groups of people, and Musk is the god of the soft sell, and the way that it's kind of beginning to change as I watch the reaction, but overwhelmingly this center of the alternative media, the barricade brigade, as I call them, they bought him hook, line, and sinker. For whatever reason, naivety in some ways, he's telling them what they want to hear, which is the worst thing. If I say this to anybody, if someone's telling you what you want to hear, then you need to be more skeptical with them than those are telling you what you don't want to hear, because it's one of the greatest ways. If someone tells you what you don't want to hear, you have immediate resistance to it because you don't want it to be true. But if someone's telling you what you do want to hear, I stand for free speech and all this stuff, then your resistance goes down. Your fists go down because they're telling you what you want to hear because you want it to be true, and
That's right.
it's so important because this cult, its real ability, its real brilliance is in manipulating um, human perception. That's its brilliance. It's brilliant at that, and it's because it understands reality that it keeps that from us. But it's also brilliant at predicting that if you provide stimuli A, you will get reaction B from the public. All the time that's going on. And so they've allowed, I mean, this is the point, people say, before Musk, Twitter was controlled by the deep state. Okay, and he put out the Twitter files to show that. Okay, well, a couple of things. So the deep state once you would want to control Twitter, right? Oh yeah, yeah, and it was controlling Twitter, wasn't it? And who was on it and who wasn't? Oh yeah, yeah. So why did they sell it to a free speech absolutist then? Why did they do it?
Right.
They had no need, but they did. And the other thing is this: what Musk is doing, it's a total scam. What he's doing, he's picking fights, very public fights. He's got one with Brazil at the moment. He's had a bit of a spat with Australia. He's having a little bit of a spat with the EU, but he's picking fights and very publicly. Oh, I won't stand for free speech. Do you know these are official figures? That under Twitter before Musk, Twitter took down 50% of the content demanded to be taken down by governments and authorities. Under Musk, it's 80%.
Oh wow.
He picked a
Wow.
fight. He picked a fight with Australia after this religious priest was stabbed on video, and they told him to take it down in Australia. He took it down. They then said, take it down globally. And he refused. He picked a fight, and it was big because you pick a fight you think you can win often. And they said we want it taken down globally, and he wouldn't. What it turns out is that in the 6 months to March of this year, X took down 40,000 pieces of content globally demanded by the European Union. And it also turns out that he's taken down stuff globally on the say-so of the Australian government before as well. So, this is what happens. You see, if you're a researcher and you want the truth, you go in, you ask questions. You don't have a side. You don't say, "Oh, that's my side, so they're unquestionable," or "This person's saying what I want to hear, so it's unquestionable." You question every statement, no matter who it comes from, to see if it stands up. And this is why a proper researcher must not have a group think, must not have a side. You can have a side morally. You're making choices, yes, but an actual group side. Because what happens is people stop questioning their side because their side good, their side bad, the other side bad, so we'll question them. That's not a researcher, and that's what's happening, and it's sad, and it's not getting us closer to the truth.
Right. Well,
Mr.
thank you.
Icke, I don't want Gemma to get mad at us, so I'm gonna hand over the outro to Tammy, Unacceptable Canadian Girl. I believe she had one more question for you, and she's gonna deal with the outro as far as who's hosting next week. So Tammy, take it away.
First of all, I wish I would have discovered you a long time ago.
Yeah, me too.
100%.
This has been such an experience. My question really is centered around what is after this, and I want to just explain why. I was very fortunate to have a father. I lost him in 2019, but I had a father who was very much in the awakening process, and he, from a very young age, he taught me that we were frequency, and that love was the highest frequency that we could put out there. And I have no idea how he knew any of this. If I could sit with one person and ask them questions, it would be him, because I've spent probably the last 5 years wondering how he could have known all of this without the internet. So one of the things that he said to me that has stuck with me since I was a little girl, and it was when he was leaving for a camping trip. I was absolutely devastated because he was my everything. And he said, when I go away, do you feel my love? And, I said, of course I do. And he said, okay, so if I'm on another continent, will you feel my love? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, if I went to outer space, would you still feel my love? And I said, yes. And he said, one day I'm not going to be here, but you will still feel my love. And that after he died, that's something that has always stuck with me, because I do still feel his love. And in losing him, the gateway process actually became a huge interest for me. So when you brought that up today, I was smiling ear to ear listening to you talk about that, because to me, it meant that there was something more out there. And I guess my question for you is, what is after this? And what does it mean for us and our loved ones that are already gone?
Well, first of all, your father was obviously a very enlightened man.
Thank you. He was.
Secondly, when you go through this process I talked about earlier of expanding your self-identity and awareness deeper and deeper into the field of consciousness, you are accessing information, insight, knowledge, awareness that doesn't need a newspaper or a internet post. It's just in the field. It's in the field. What they are seeking to do in this conspiracy is to so focus our attention on a myopia of the field, human self-identity, that we don't access that level of insight that your father clearly did. So he didn't need the internet. None of us need the bloody internet to access expanded levels of awareness. In fact, you go on Twitter; it's probably the last place to go. But it's expanding your self-identity deeper and deeper in the field. you are going to be accessing more and more and more and more knowledge. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm enjoying this, so I'll waffle for a bit. When I had my awakening, which was basically the top of my head blew off in 1990, and I was told through a psychic when I was still working for the BBC that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. It seemed crazy at the time, but not for long after what happened. And what came through the psychic in 1990 was that I was going to be led to knowledge, and that at other times knowledge would be put directly into my mind. So for the first, and it started immediately after that, I would find myself walking into people, personal experiences, documents, books that were putting information in front of me that was clearly coordinated. Because it would, a subject would come into my mind, and suddenly information about that subject will be coming at me from all angles. It's been going on for 35 years. It still is. But what was also said was what also I experienced is that in the first 2 years after 1990, 2.5 years, I would come to conclusions as a result of this information of what was going on. And then there was a very demonstrable switch where I knew that what was going on, just knew. And then the tangible names, dates, places information would follow to support the initial quote knowing. And this is something that anyone can do. Clearly, your father had the ability to do that. To tap into these expanded levels of awareness where this information exists, because it's systematically firewalled off as best they can from human perception, and you can access knowledge that that you don't need a Facebook post to tell you. So then what has happened over the years is, like I said earlier, whatever I know there's always more to know. So I started off in the early 1990s, and it was all focused on basically what I now call the global cult. It was this secret society network manipulating through politicians and governments, etc. And then around 1996, I had experiences where the non-human element came in. That was information that suddenly was hitting me from all angles, exactly as the normal sequence. And then just after the turn of the millennium, I just knew this was a simulation. That this was a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation at this level is what we call the speed of light. I looked around to see if anyone else was saying anything like that, and I only found one guy at the time in the public arena, a guy called Nick Bostrom at Oxford University, who was talking about the possibility that this is a simulated reality. But since then, especially from around 2017 time, more and more mainstream scientists are starting to come to the conclusion that if you go down the simulation route, then loads and loads of apparent scientific mysteries start to make sense and are no longer mysteries. And then, obviously, once I'd realized that this is a simulation at this level, and I can explain in detail how we interact with it and how we kind of decode it. But my next question was, why I can understand why consciousness comes here, or is enticed to come here once, or is manipulated to come here once. But I've traveled to a lot of countries, 60 odd countries in the last since 1990, and most of the world is not having a good time. In fact, lots of people in the so-called privileged West are not having a good time at all. Increasingly so, but in other parts of the world, they're having an extraordinarily bad time in terms of trying to survive another day. across Asia, Africa, South America, Central America, and so on. And so I thought, okay, I can understand why consciousness would be manipulated once to come here, but once it left the body, it would be, I ain't going back to that bloody place again. That's bloody horrible, that is. But
Right.
Mm.
but
Yeah.
but what coming around to answer your question, what was obvious to me by this time is that reincarnation was real. I have a different uh, explanation for it to lots of people that believe in reincarnation, but it was real. And in the Reveal, my new book, I quote a guy called Ian Stevenson, for instance. And Ian Stevenson was actually an American Canadian a psychiatrist, and he spent most of his career, much of his career, investigating reincarnation on the basis of this. He started coming across very young children that could remember past lives in detail. And so he thought, well, I'm going to check this out. So he would talk to them. He would get all the details that they said about their past life, names, locations, what was there, what wasn't there, etc. And he would check it out. He had thousands of cases and produced reports and books on it. And the correlation between what these kids said, young kids, and the supportable evidential facts were extraordinary. For instance, there was one I mentioned this in the Reveal. He was a young boy who claimed that he was once the husband of a woman, I think it was in India, that was still alive. So what Stevenson did was take the boy to the family, including his former wife, as he claimed. And he knew, this is the other thing, that they would tell details of how a house was laid out when they'd never been to that town, never mind that house. And it was true.
Wow.
It turned out to be true. So in this case, the wife said to the boy eventually, or what was claimed to be the wife, well, he never left a will. Tell us where the will was. And this boy, in Stevenson's account, went to a floorboard in the kitchen and pointed at it. And they took the floorboard
Stop.
up, and there was the will, right?
Wow.
Whoa.
So that I go into these examples a lot in one of the chapters in the book, because reincarnation is real, but I don't buy the fact that we come here to learn lessons, right? Okay. Can you just explain to me, spirit guides, what lessons the kids in Gaza are currently learning? You know what I mean?
Right.
When you see the horrors that people experience. Now, what are those horrors producing? Loosh, low vibrational
Yes.
emotional and mental energy. A war is a banquet, like I said earlier. So what I've done in the book is I've found people who claim, I think that they're absolutely right, because the common themes they talk about are very compelling. They can remember the incarnation process. And funnily enough, when you read and you see the accounts, and I've done so in enormous numbers now, of so-called near-death experiences, where they leave the body and they find themselves in a completely different reality. Why? Because the body is decoding the simulation into this. And once it ceases to function, it's not doing that anymore. And so your consciousness is released into another dimension. What is death? It's simply a transfer of attention. That's all it is. That's all it is. And so you when you look at what these people have said, they often talk about the fact that this astral dimension, which is where they immediately go, is kind of technological and in a way physical. And I say that this astral dimension is actually something called plasma, which is called the fourth state of matter. 99.9%, possibly 99% of the visible universe is plasma. And I say that's the astral. When you're now looking at the world, you're seeing form, like there's a light and there's a wall and there's a picture. And in between the form, which is atomic matter, this tiny band of frequency, is what we call empty space. But it's not empty space. It's only empty space to the decoding system of visible light. It's actually plasma. And if you go deeper and deeper and deeper into this plasma, you enter the astral dimension. That's all death is. But of course, if you can keep this from people, then you create a massive mass fear of death, which is fear of the unknown. The more that you keep unknown, the more there is to fear the unknown. And then
it brings a whole new light to the truth will set you free, because if people knew the truth, they really would be set free.
Yeah, because yeah, exactly that. Because you are just a point of attention that transfers to another point of attention, and that's all that happens at death. There's absolutely nothing to fear. But the more they can give you to fear, the more loose you produce. One of the things that these people that remember their incarnation process describe is as they enter this reality, this human reality, it is incredibly, extraordinarily, monumentally dense energetically. It's almost impossible to experience the density. So first of all, people who see themselves as human need to be kind to themselves, because we are in an extraordinarily challenging, energetic environment. And we're in that density because it's more likely to impact upon us to produce loosh, because it's so dense. And what happens is, I'm coming around to answer your question. When you leave the body, you enter this astral dimension. Now, this astral dimension is much lighter, but it's still, as I would say in the books, still part of the simulation. It's just another level of it. But it's a much less dense level. And as you leave the body, it can feel like heaven. It can feel like bliss, because you've just left the density that this has been decoding. So I looked at all these near-death experiences and their accounts and the reincarnation stuff, and it's clear to me. I mean, I won't go into it now, but it's in detail in the reveal that the other levels of the matrix, the astral levels, are part of a trap that is described in Buddhism as the wheel of samsara, where you leave the body and then you go through a process, a sequence, and then you come back into the body in another life. Because without that second level of the simulation, consciousness would experience this level and then it would be out of here, not going back there. But they do, because one of the things that is very, very interesting are the similarities between how people are controlled. Ultimately, what are people? Consciousness is controlled in the human reality, and how they're controlled in the astral reality part of the simulation. It's the same in this sense. Most people are so programmed to believe in their own deficiencies and limitations that they look to authority and authority figures and quote experts to tell them what to think. Brackets see COVID, so they do it. And if they don't do it, then they fear not doing it and do it anyway. And then when you leave the body and you read all these near death experiences, one of the things that these people that remember the incarnation process say is that as you enter this reality from the astral, you go through a mind wipe. One of the people involved actually describes what she saw. It's like an electromagnetic net or field, and when you go through it, it's like your mind is wiped. Do you remember the old discs in the early days of computers, where you would rub them over a magnetic field and it would wipe them clean,
Right.
so you can use them again. Same principle, same principle. And so you come in, and that's why the vast majority of people, overwhelming majority of people, can't remember the past lives. They basically start with a blank sheet of paper, like, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? And what Stevenson found, Ian Stevenson, is by about the age of 7, the memories start to fade. Some go into adulthood, but that's rare. Most of them start to fade about the age of 7, because the programming of this world starts to override the memory. And so you come in, and another thing that I found interesting and bewildering is that in these near-death experiences, when they left the body, they describe a state of bliss and a reality. They say a state of bliss and a reality I'd never experienced before. It was wonderful. It was godlike, right? And you go, so you believe in reincarnation, right? Well, yeah. Well, why don't you remember it then? Why don't you remember it? You must have experienced it loads of times before. Why not? Because that mind wipe is when you come in, and the mind wipe is when you go out, until you're back in the astral fold of the wheel of samsara, and then you can have your memories return on the basis of being told that you have lessons to learn. You've got karma. Look what you did, and in this massive density and all that stuff. I mean, when people read the reveal, they'll be shocked at some of these near-death experiences described. And like I said, in the human world, people look to authority. Now, because of this, not least because of this mind wipe, when people leave the body, they are in this bewildered state, because still mind wiped. They don't remember they've done this loads of times before, as they don't remember they've done this in the human world loads of times before. And so what do? What appears are authority figures, spirit guides, religious heroes. If you're a Christian, you'll see Jesus. If you're a Muslim, you'll see something to do with the Muslim religion, etc., etc. Oh, you'll see loved ones or whatever. And the absolute common theme of these near-death experiences, minus only a tiny few, is that people are put through consciousness in that state is put through something called a life review, where these elders, they're all elders, because elders are perceived in the human world to be wise, and so they're presented with freaking elders and old guys with beards and stuff. I mean, it's a joke. And they put them through this life review, and they see their life played back and all the things they went wrong. And interestingly, again, you see these near-death experiences again and again said, "Oh, there's no judgment in the afterlife," and you go, "What do you mean? You judge yourself? You're going, oh my God, I wish I hadn't done that." Yeah, that's the scam. Oh yeah, well, you've got lessons to learn, and so you come back and you come back and you come back and you come back. So, for instance, you could have. This is why it's so important that we kind of understand that. You can be Alex Jones, who's going on about conspiracy. You can leave the body. You can go through the wheel of samsara, and you can come back as someone who's anti-conspiracy. You know what I mean? It's a trap.
Right.
It's a trap. We've got to get out of the simulation, all the levels of it. And that, again, comes down to your state of perception, your state of self-identity. See, what I'm talking about in the reveal is 3 levels. I give them names, but really, I mean, you give them names to show them apart, but I mean, names are just labels. But so you've got the human body, and that's decoding this level of the simulation, this dense level, this atomic matter level, as we call it, which is just a frequency. And then you leave the body, and you enter something that we call the soul. So the conspiratorial network is not bothered, even if you believe you have a soul, because your soul is still in the simulation. The consciousness is vibrating too quickly to interact with these worlds. So I can't, touch this or tap these keys unless I have an outer shell, my consciousness, that is of the same frequency that I want to interact with. That's why we have this body and what have you. When you enter the astral, you also need an outer shell that can interact with that level of frequency. So your soul body is much more ethereal from our point of view, is human, but it's still an external shell. And you're still in the simulation. What I call spirit is that which knows that it is simply a state of awareness. It has no form, it has no outer shell. It is just a state of awareness, a state of being aware. And ultimately, if it expands enough, all awareness, and that level of all awareness is what religions call God. And but of course, you're a blasphemer if you say you are an expression of God. You have to be subordinate to God. We're all got to be subordinate to authority, so people that are still caught in the perceptual trap go through this wheel of samsara, in and out of this reality in different forms with different programs and different quote lives and etc. And those that are self-aware enough to realize they are spirit, they are vibrating so fast because of that perception, that self-identity, that they're out of the whole thing. And what this conspiratorial entrapment seeks to do is hold us, whether in the astral or here, in a state of perception that keeps us in the frequency that's still in the simulation. And we've come an enormous distance from Trump is the savior, right?
Yeah.
This is the level to which we need to go, so that we can truly be free and not have the illusion of freedom. Because, I say to people, okay, Trump gets in, you're hero. Okay. So what happens 4 years from now? Someone else is coming in. It just goes on and on and on. Even if he's genuine, I don't believe he is, but even if he's genuine, it just goes on.
That's right. Here today, gone tomorrow politician, right?
Exactly. And if you give your power to, see, that's another point. I'll finish on this. There's another point, is that what they're trying to do, because we have this capacity for power to dictate our experience, to dictate our reality, they need to disconnect us from that. So they're always trying to get us to give our power away to them in some form. So, for instance, 74 million people voted for Trump at the last election. They whatever level they're at, they're pushbacking on elements of the agenda. So what they are manipulated to do is to see one guy as the savior and all these people around him. So you give your power to that guy for the next 4 years. And then he dictates your fate for the next 4 years. What if that 74 million simply said, we're not cooperating with our own enslavement? We're not doing it. It would be unenforceable. But they don't, because they're manipulated to give their power to a single individual. I don't care who he is, Trump or anybody. And that's what they're trying to do. Always trying to give us, to get us to give our power away to government, give our power away to experts. When we are all powerful, we've just forgotten. And we've been manipulated to forget, because if we remember, the house of cards comes down.
Yeah.
True.
Exactly.
Well said.
Wow.
Tammy, take us home.
Wow, thank you so much. What an answer. I'm so glad I was able to actually ask that question. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been amazing. I cannot stop smiling actually. So this is so great. Ashley, I know you are up next week. Did you want to just kind of give us a rundown on what you'll be talking about?
Yes, for sure. David, thanks so much for joining us today.
No problem.
It's been amazing. As Tammy said, I really wish that I had have found you sooner, but I guess I've been slow to wake up. But I'm definitely going back and reading all of your books. I'm just reading The Trap right now, and it's fantastic. So for next week, we actually have Heather Mason on. She is the founder of CAUSEBAR, which is the Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights Coalition. And basically, she's a woman who has been in and out of the federal prison system due to like a fentanyl addiction. And she's seen firsthand how women's rights are being usurped, say, by trans rights and whatnot. And so she's a woman who stands up for women's and girls' fundamental rights to bodily privacy, dignity, fairness, and security. And yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting chat as well. So that should be pretty good.
Ooh, excited for that
Awesome.
one. I just wanted to say also, David, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Like Tammy said and Ashley said, I wish I had, found you earlier, but I'm happy I found you recently.
Well, that's good.
And it's been nice to virtually meet you, and hopefully maybe one day I have the
Yeah,
opportunity to
but
shake
I'm
your
getting back into Canada one day.
one
Yep.
day.
Go back to the Border Police Christmas party. Yeah.
You don't need to come back to
Thank you again.
Canada.
The reveal is out now, and it's delivered in North America from North America, so people could get it in a couple of days or so. But I've also done an audio version of it, which people can download immediately off the web.
I just purchased it.
Yeah, where I actually read the book, and it's quite therapeutic actually, and it's very enjoyable to read the book you've written, because you can deliver it in exactly the way that you wrote it. And so and of course in America you got these vast distances you drive. I suppose it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you again for joining us. My reveal copy's been ordered. I'm waiting. It'll be my 9th David Icke book.
Whoa.
And yeah, I got a few of them right there. But yeah, thank you again. And I guess I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, ladies, for letting me host. This is your podcast, but I appreciate you for letting me take over for an episode for our special guest. And I guess we'll catch everybody next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
I really enjoyed it.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, David.
Bye.